Good morning. It is Friday morning and I just came off of a big job yesterday, so I'm still a little tired waking up, so I thought I'd just do a fun little repair video and kind of explanation of how to improve the product. See if we can get that done. If not, we at least need to get our tool working so that it'll be ready for us in the future. So when I was first getting into woodworking, late 90s, early 2000, I guess more regularly, I've always been woodworking for a long time, but I was getting more, doing more jobs and needing faster equipment to make my jobs go quicker. And I got myself the nailer pack. This in the late 90s, early 2000s was the, I think, staple at Home Depot. It's a Porter cable set. It came with 2 and then I think later 3 different nail guns, plus that pancake compressor. It was just seen everywhere. They sold hundreds of thousands, probably millions of these sets, and they were good, reliable units. So now this, let's see, this is a 09, so this is a little bit later unit, but I know I purchased another set way before that. So even after all these years, it was working great. But I went to go use it the other day and there's something wrong with it. So let me show you what's wrong. So here is a tag. I like to put tags on all my tools that need repair or that are for parts, so I know what is wrong with them, so I don't have to go through the whole process in the future because I'll forget what I did to it. So it just says needs a new trigger cartridge, and I put the date too just to see how long it's been sitting. So let's take that off. It sounds fine, nothing wrong with it, but when you pull the trigger, you hear that? That's air leaking out of the trigger cartridge right here. There's a bunch of different O-rings in here, and that's what's failed. So no air is going to the main chamber right here, or at least with not enough pressure, because it's all leaking out right here. And I've already been through this once, but we'll get into that in just a minute. So the goal for this video today is there's 2 parts. One, let's just fix it. That is more just to show how to do it. It's not going to be very complicated. But the second part is I want to dissect what's wrong with it and see if there's a way to fix it, because I've already been in it and I know what the problem is, but it's something I've never seen before, so maybe there's another fix. So we'll get into that. But right now, let's get this trigger assembly fixed. So here's the part. It is, well, this was on Amazon, but basically if you just look up Porter cable, the model number is FN250c. Get the whole trigger assembly, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But you want the whole part will just come out and go in. It has all the O-rings and the seals in it, and you don't have to worry about it. It was like $15. But for this part failing for a 10-cent piece, there's got to be a different way to fix it. But I just went ahead and buy the whole part. Now, like I said, this is, actually I didn't tell you, this is a 16-gauge nailer. The other unit that came with the kit was the 18-gauge nailer, and I've loved them. They work flawlessly, no problems until things wear out. So to get this out, let me zoom you in here, you can't see. So basically, to get this trigger assembly out, there's 2 roll pins that you've got to knock out. And then there's an O-ring, just a rubber O-ring holding this other pin that pulls out from this side. So let's go ahead and, since there on this side is almost out, let's go ahead and knock it this way. So we're just knocking the roll pins out. And I do want to make a note. Let me show you here. There's a long pin and a short pin. I don't know if you can see that. Alright. Remember that the long pin goes closest to the air chamber and the short pin goes the farthest away. So just keep that in mind when you're putting it back together. And then we need a pick to get that O-ring out. So this really isn't that hard of a project to do. And the reason for the failure, I consider, I don't know if it's what the engineering reason for, but let's see if we can not picking out very easily, and I don't want to tear it. So let's see if we can punch it out. There you go. Just punch it out, and don't lose your O-ring. Don't lose that little O-ring there. And we just flip it over and pull the pin out. And that's what that looks like. Alright. We got the red trigger that comes out here. Just keeping in mind where the spring goes. You see there's a little spring right here that goes around the, I guess the nipple of the trigger. And then you can just pull the trigger out. Should be tight in there because it has O-rings, but it pulls out, I promise. Let me see if I can get a pair of pliers, get it out a little easier. I think I greased it up the last time when I put it back in. So it's in there pretty good here. There you go. Oh, it came apart. This should be one unit. I think I greased it pretty good. Let's see if we can get that out easily. Can you see the top half of it fell out? It's gonna decide to come out in pieces. Well, at least we don't have to take it apart next time. Or when we're talking about it. So normally this comes apart easily in one unit. But I think because I took it apart last time, half of it, the top of it got stuck inside there. There you go. See, that's just the top half of it, and I'll show you. And I think I greased it up pretty good, so that's why I got kind of stuck. But yeah, we're good. Let's go ahead now, let's open up our part. Yeah, I don't really have a part number for it. You just have to look it up on Amazon. This isn't really the official porter cable part, but it'll do. Alright, so this is what the part looks like when it comes out in one piece. Ours came out in 3 different pieces, but we'll get to that in just a minute. But that's not a problem. I will put a little bit of grease on there just to help it along. Vaseline would work. They probably make some special grease for it. I'm just going to use automotive dielectric tune-up grease. It's basically the same thing. Just put a little bit on there. Just to help it slide in better and plus keep it moisturized. You should always oil your guns up, but this will help too. So basically the process is just reverse of the way it came out. You just put the slide the trigger in there. Slides a lot easier. We'll see how that goes, how well those O-rings will seal. And then you put the trigger on. Remember that wire cage needs to go around the silver nipple right there. Let me get you a little closer. Alright, that gets in there. And go ahead and put the big one in first. And that holds the trigger. That's the pivot point for the trigger itself. So it should go all the way through. I hold it from the bottom here. And then just stick your O-ring on. So that holds it in. And then we can go ahead and put our pins, roll pins in. Remember the big one goes closest to the chamber here. And then the short one goes on the back side. And then you can finish it off by evening up the pins. It's a little longer. Yeah, it's a little longer. Let's do a shorter one here. It's dancing around. There you go. Let's see how it is. I just try to make it a little bit even so it's flush on each side so it's not sticking out. Alright. My trigger just came out. We missed the hole. Let's try that again. Let's try lining that back up again. There you go. It's in there now. Alright. Alright, let's see if those O-rings were tight enough. Alright, so whenever you use a tool anytime, you put some lubricating oil in there. Now I've had this bottle so long, and I just keep using it. It just lasts forever. But it got a crack in it. So now instead of using the top, I just use the side of the bottle, which is I probably need to get a new container. But for these you put, I think it's 2 or 3 drops in. Hook it up. Yeah, it's leaking a little bit, but let's see if it fires. It fires, so it's working now. Let's put some nails in it and give it a test. So I just disconnect from the air. These are a 2-inch 16 gauge. You bring the nails in front of the rear holder, and that pushes pressure on the nails as you're shooting it. All right, so we're hooked back up to the air. Got my safety glasses on. Oh yeah, we're back in business. Now it's shooting way too hard. I think the pressure's too high. The compressor was at 110 PSI. I like to run it more at 90. There you go. And it is a little bit lower. So what you can do is it has the adjustment here. And raise it up. There you go. Perfect. So you can see our nails shot perfectly. This is our last one. It's just below the plane of the surface, and then the other ones were a little bit too deep, but not too bad. That's all adjustable. So as you can hear, the air's on, but we're getting a little leak. So that's telling me the tolerance of the O-rings on the outside are not big enough, and it was a little loose. And that was the comment on this particular unit, that it was a little bit loose, but it works. So we can always go into there, get a maybe bigger O-ring and fix that, but I'm glad it's working right now. I'd rather have a little bit of a leak than it not working at all. So that puts us in a lot better position. Well, it's a few days later from when we first fixed the nail gun, and I just put the new part in, fixed it, done. The second part of the video was I was going to show you how to fix the old cartridge, or find a fix for the old cartridge, and I thought the direction of the video was going to go with, I knew they were using the wax O-rings. I guess they're called O-rings, but they're wax instead of rubber, around the main shaft, and I thought I was going to have to make my own O-rings using super glue and cutting bigger O-rings and making them smaller. I did all this off camera, and I was doing some trial and error, and I was getting the rings the right diameter, but they were just too fat for the area that was engineered on the shaft. So I got really frustrated. I thought the video was done, and I really didn't have a good conclusion to it. So like many things, I just let it sit, and I didn't even worry about it. I would just think about it, actually, not worry about it, but just think about it. And hopefully something would come to me, or maybe, I don't know, I'd be sent in a different direction. Or I'd just scrap the whole video. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I came down to the shop tonight, and I thought about it. So this is the trigger assembly that fails, and that was what we heard the hissing coming from. It's made of 4 different parts. You got, I don't even know the official names of them. You got the top part, you've got a plunger, and each one of these pieces has O-rings all over it. And then you've got a shaft. This is what I'm going to call the trigger shaft, because this is the button that when you push the trigger, this is what the plunger that pushes up. And it's got O-rings on it too. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then one more on the inside. Let's see. Oh yeah. See here. You got 2, 5, 6, 7. 7 O-rings. So that's why I would say if you've got an old one, just buy a new one for $14 and to replace it. But I was determined, I wanted to see if I could fix this myself without, with just fixing it with O-rings or some way without having to buy a new one. So the problem is why these fail over time, as when you get the trigger plunger shaft, where these 2 black O-rings are, that is a wax ring. Instead of rubber, it's made out of wax. So I mean, it's gonna fail over the time. And then also the same thing with up here, the top of here, there was a wax ring. Since then, I mean, when you pull this out, it just disintegrates. So I really don't want to take my new one apart, because then it will fall apart and it won't work again. And it's already leaking, we heard, so I'm not really sure which part of it's leaking. So it's not a good fit on the new one. But I wanted to figure out, can I put an O-ring in here to replace it? And the answer is no. I was taking measurements with my caliper. I was measuring the inside diameter of the shaft and the outside measurement of where it needed to go. And looking online, I was going to order an O-ring kit to see what would fit, but none of the O-rings, standard sizes, metric or imperial, fit the requirements that's needed. Now, I tried to put some O-rings on here, but they were always too big to fit, because this plunger needs to go up inside the inner plunger, or whatever whatever we're going to call this piece, the inner part. It's got to go up inside there. And also the same thing is this top O-ring needs to be able to easily slide up there. Now I put one size on there and it was way too big, and it was just it was just too tight. This has got to have movement for the trigger to work. So what I thought about tonight is, this basically was done for. I couldn't find the right size, because everything I was seeing online, there's no in-between size. So however they engineered this, they engineered it to some weird size that then they realized, well, I wish I would know the reason why they used the wax rings, because the wax was bound to fail. Maybe it has a better seal, I'm not really sure. But whatever size they decided to use was not a standard size, so the wax ring, maybe they misdesigned it and they had to use the wax ring to fix their error of why these pieces didn't fit. I'm not really sure. But what I decided to do is try to get standard O-rings. I did have an O-ring kit, I think it's Imperial, and what I thought was, these are too tight to go in there, so why not widen the hole of where the O-rings need to go and see if that would help. Well, so what I did was I figured out, well, first I figured out what O-rings somewhat fit in here, or that were a little bit too big. And I'll tell you what it is, so if you want to try it yourself, you can. The top one is a little loose, but it works. I've tested this, so it does work. and it is an A010, A10. So you can put that on there. It's a quarter by quarter inside diameter, 3/8 outside diameter, and it's 1/16 of an inch thick. So that, put that up here. That fits there. And I lubed everything too with dielectric grease. Then down here at the bottom one, the one that closest to the trigger, is a little bit bigger, and I used the A006, which is 1/8 by 1/4 by 1/16 thick. But then I had to use a smaller one for the upper one, just maybe for tighter tolerances. I played with multiple sizes, but this one fit the best. And this is an A005, which is 3/32 by 15/64 by 9/128. So very, very tiny. But those are standard sizes, so you should be able to find that in pretty much any kit. But the key was these were all too big, so when I put it together before and I'd clamp it down, the trigger would not move. It was just super tight. So what I decided to do is I figured out what drill bit size to use to drill partially down here in the bottom of the trigger housing. And then when I put it together, it was kind of working, but it didn't work perfectly right, because what I forgot to do was you got to drill this a little wider so the top O-ring can slide up inside. Just the top one, so it doesn't have to go far, just the O-ring width. You just got to drill just an O-ring width down. For the first one, not both of them, just the first one. The bottom one just seals up the bottom. Top one seals up the top. And that drill bit size, I gotta check my notes here. 15/64. So use a 15/64 bit. I got it, I just eyeballed it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I got it close. So then I put it together, and surprisingly, it all worked. After that long explanation, let's get it back, put it back together. Just so put the trigger plunger back in there, and snap it together. And I test it. Oh, let's see here. It's not. Oh, and another trick to get this open, I've had to open this multiple times. This is a pick with a little curve on it. I don't know if you can see it. There's a pick with a little angled curve on it. That works the best. You just kind of get it inside here, and you lift it up, and then you turn it to the next one, and then lift the second one up, and without poking yourself, it should come apart. Oh, now I know why it wasn't working. I forgot the spring. Don't forget your spring. So you got your trigger plunger that goes in here. Don't forget your spring. That's why it's not going up and down. And then the inner plunger that goes inside the top housing. I don't know what the names of these are. We'll just make them up. But that works. Now you see how the plunger is protruding, and it's got good travel. It's got good travel there. So let's get it back in the gun, and we'll give it some test. For this test, I'm leaving the O-ring off, but make sure when you put it back together, don't forget to put the O-ring. I think this size is the A005 size, and that holds the pin right here in. So just don't, I'm not going to do it right now while we're testing it, but make sure you put that back on. Once that's in together, you're good to go. So let's give it a test. So before I get started, remember, wear your safety glasses. While I was testing this, and before one of the steps before I did the final drilling of it, I put the unit back together, and I was about to test it, and it had a misfire. Luckily, I was practicing good safety with it, always having the gun pointed away from you, and when you're working on it, always have it disconnected. I had connected it, and I had a misfire, but luckily it was pointed away from me. So make sure doing any of this, especially you're actually modifying their trigger assembly, and so you're on your own for that part. This is just an experiment. If you're gonna try it on your own, but you always should be careful, even with a good known unit. Make sure if you're doing anything like adding nails or anything, disconnect the air just in case you have a misfire. Make sure it's pointed away from you or any other person, so it doesn't. So if there is a misfire, you don't get hurt. I know there's a safety on here, but you never know. Anything could happen. So we got air. Here's our test bed. And there you go. We got it working. So I'd love to know the engineering of why they used wax O-rings in there, but I'm also happy that I was able to figure out to engineer it to use regular rubber O-rings. So in the next time if it fails, I know how to fix it. Well, this just turned out to be an interesting video. At first I thought the whole entire thing was going to be scrapped on the ground because I've seen other videos of how to replace the trigger assembly, and I didn't want to put out another one. But I did want to show us fixing it by buying a new cartridge, but also is there a way to fix it with using O-rings? And it took a while, but I was glad I was able to figure that out. I hope that helps you, but remember, when working with any pneumatics or any type of item that fires, treat it like a gun and be very safe. Remember, this is experimental, so you're on your own when doing it. Thanks for coming along on the adventure with us, and we'll see you in our next video. Till next time. And if you'd like to see more videos like the one that you just saw, you can check here and here. And remember the ABCs of making. Always be creating. Till next time.